I read the message again, though I'd already memorized every word. Please don't come this time, Clara. It's just family. Just family. 2 words I'd spent half my life trying to earn. So I stayed home that Thanksgiving, watching their smiling faces glow across my phone screen. The table I set, the chair I used to fill, all shining without me. They told me I wasn't welcome. They made sure I believed it. But the thing about being unwelcome is, eventually, you stop knocking. And when I finally got rich, I built a table of my own, big enough for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. The text read, "Please don't come this time, Clara. It's just family." For a long moment, I just stared at it. The glow of the phone screen washed over my kitchen table, illuminating the half-empty mug of tea I'd forgotten hours ago. The message sat there, small and polite, like cruelty wearing pearls. I read it again, Deborah's name bold at the top, then set the phone down slowly, as if gentleness could dull the sting. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, a dozen replies flickering through my mind. Why? What did I do? But I knew better than to ask. I'd learned long ago that Deborah's decisions never came with explanations, just announcements. So I typed, "Of course. Have a lovely evening." The words looked cheerful. They even sounded like me, like the version of me my family tolerated. I hit send and exhaled through my nose, the quiet whistle of someone trying to look unbothered. From the living room, Olivia called, "Mom, what did she say?" Her voice carried that mix of hope and anger only a daughter could manage. I didn't answer right away. I picked up the tea, took a sip of the cold, bitter remains, and said, "They're keeping it small this year." Olivia stepped into the kitchen, arms folded, eyes sharp. "Small as in everyone but you small?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that." She shook her head. "I don't get it. After everything you've done for them, they still live." I cut her off softly. Because sometimes silence is louder than protest. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she crossed to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was warm, steady. "You don't deserve this." "I know," I said, and I did. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Later, after she went upstairs, I sat in the quiet and opened my phone again. Social media had already started to bloom with the usual holiday colors. Photos of my siblings' kids arranging table settings, Deborah's perfectly basted turkey, Michael carving something golden under a chandelier. Family time. Deborah's caption read, a heart emoji, a maple leaf. The irony almost made me laugh. Family time. And yet somehow I was always the one just outside the frame. The house was too still. The clock ticked in the hallway, a soft metronome for my loneliness. I went to the window and looked out at the cul-de-sac, where other people's homes were glowing with laughter and clinking dishes. My reflection in the glass looked older than I felt, lines drawn by years of holding myself together. When the phone buzzed again, I snatched it up before I could think. A new message. "Happy Thanksgiving, Aunt Clara," from my niece Emily. I smiled despite everything. She'd sent a photo of the whole family, everyone grinning around the table. Deborah sat at the head, silver earrings catching the light. An empty chair was visible at the far end, unplanned, but there all the same. I zoomed in on that empty chair until it filled the screen. It was ridiculous, but I couldn't look away. Maybe it wasn't meant for me anymore. Maybe it never was. By 10 o'clock, the sink was full of dishes from the small meal Olivia and I had made for ourselves: roasted chicken instead of turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce straight from the can. I cleaned slowly, deliberately, each motion anchoring me. When Olivia came down in her pajamas, she found me polishing the same plate over and over. "Come on, Mom," she said gently. "Let's watch a movie. Something funny." "In a minute," I murmured. When she went back upstairs, I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. The tile was cool beneath my bare feet. My phone sat on the table beside the folded dish towel, screen dark now. For once, I didn't pick it up. Outside, a car door slammed. Laughter drifted down the street. Neighbors returning home from dinners where they'd been expected, wanted, loved. I turned off the kitchen light, the room falling into a soft gray hush. I sat down at the table alone again, tracing the wood grain with my fingertip. It was a good table. Sturdy. Simple. The kind of thing that lasts if you take care of it. Maybe that was the lesson tonight, that I'd spent too long waiting for a seat at other people's tables when I already had one of my own. Still, the ache stayed lodged under my ribs. I whispered into the empty room, barely audible even to myself. One day, they'll regret it. And as I said it, something quiet but certain shifted inside me, like a match being struck in the dark. Monday morning came with the smell of overbrewed coffee and the faint ache of pretending everything was fine. At the school office, I moved through the motions: attendance sheets, lesson plans, a smile that had grown automatic over the years. By mid-morning, the front desk phone rang, and Mrs. Henson, our secretary, called out, "Clara, there's a delivery for you." I blinked. For me? A young man in a florist's uniform appeared, balancing an enormous vase of autumn roses and lilies, the kind of arrangement meant to be seen. A ribbon curled around the neck of the vase, gold and expensive looking. My heart lifted for half a second, a foolish instinct. Then I spotted the card tucked between the stems. It read, "To Deborah, Michael, Mom, and the whole Jennings family. Grateful for another wonderful Thanksgiving together. Love, Aunt Lillian." My name wasn't there, not even as an afterthought. "Oh," the delivery boy said when I didn't move. "Is something wrong?" "No," I said, forcing a smile. "Just wrong recipient. It happens." I placed the vase on the counter, careful not to breathe in too deeply. The flowers smelled like all the places I wasn't welcome. At lunch, I ate in the break room, trying to shake the image of those names printed so neatly, the list that ended just before mine would have appeared. Across from me, Janice, the art teacher, was scrolling through her phone. "Clara, isn't this your sister?" she asked, tilting the screen toward me. There, on the local news site, was Deborah, smiling in front of a sprawling white mansion with columns, holding a gold key for the cameras. "Prominent family expands historic home." I managed a small laugh. "That's her. Wow, she looks like one of those women from a Southern lifestyle ad," Janice said. "You two must come from good stock." I didn't correct her. I just nodded, swallowing something sharp. "We come from something," I said quietly. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Between classes, I caught myself staring out the window, watching students hurry to cars waiting for them, parents waving, doors opening. It shouldn't have hurt so much, but it did, the way small things do after years of being left out of bigger ones. When I finally got home, the late sun cast a honeyed light across the kitchen table, turning the wood golden. Olivia was already there, laptop open, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied in a loose bun. She looked up when I entered. You look like someone survived another Jennings headline, she said. I smiled faintly, setting my purse down. You saw it too? Of course. It was all over the local feed. New house, new statement chandelier, new way to remind everyone she's better than us. She said it like a joke, but her eyes searched my face. You okay? I'm fine, I lied, slipping off my shoes. Just tired. She watched me for a beat, then turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a mock-up of a website, soft cream background, photos of linen runners and hand-painted vases. So, she said, I've been thinking. I frowned. About what? About how you spend every weekend making those table runners and wreaths for the church bazaar. You could sell them online, Mom. You've got an eye for things that feel like home. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Oh, Liv, that's sweet, but... Don't butt me. Her tone sharpened, just a touch. You got that small inheritance from Grandma sitting in the bank. Why let it collect dust while Deborah collects properties? Her words stung, not because she was wrong, but because she was right. I'd been careful my whole life, too careful. I wouldn't even know where to start, I said. She grinned. You start with one page. I'll handle the rest. You just make the things. I sank into the chair across from her, rubbing my temple. You really think people would buy them? I think people buy what feels real, she said. And you've always been real, Mom. That's your edge. The last bit caught me off guard. After years of being the family disappointment, the idea that my ordinariness might be a strength felt almost radical. I looked at the screen again. Her mock logo in delicate cursive, Clara's hearth. It sounded warm, safe. Mine. Okay, I said finally. Let's try. Olivia beamed, springing into action. She started talking about product photos and shipping logistics, her excitement contagious. I watched her. This young woman I'd raised in the shadow of rejection, now lighting a path I hadn't dared imagine. When she went to grab her camera, I stayed seated, fingers tracing the laptop's edge. My pulse hummed with a quiet energy, fear, maybe, or hope. Through the kitchen window, I could see the porch light flicker on across the street. Someone else's family gathering on their front steps, laughter echoing faintly through the evening air. I thought of the flowers that hadn't been mine, the house that wasn't mine, the seat that had stayed empty. Then I looked at the glow from Olivia's laptop, and for the first time in years, something inside me stirred that didn't ache. I whispered to myself, maybe it's time they start seeing what I can do. Outside, the first cold wind of December brushed against the window pane, a quiet sign of change. The first sale came on a Wednesday morning, somewhere between my third cup of coffee and a staff meeting about standardized testing. A soft ping lit up my phone. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another school memo, until I saw the notification banner. Order Ha 1001, Clara's hearth, 1 table runner, $42. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. I blinked at the screen, heart thudding, a mix of disbelief and something dangerously close to pride. Someone out there, someone I'd never met, had bought something I made with my own hands. Clara? Principal Davenport's voice yanked me back. Your thoughts on the new parent survey? I straightened in my seat, pressing the phone face down under my notebook. I think consistency's key, I said, keeping my tone even. My pulse was still racing, my smile threatening to break free. The rest of the meeting blurred. Every few minutes my phone buzzed again. New subscribers, another small sale, a message through the site. Your pieces are beautiful. Remind me of my grandmother's home. Each buzz was a heartbeat, a small whisper of validation I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. By the end of the day, I'd sold 5 runners. 5. It wasn't much, but it was something real, something mine. Over the next few weeks, my evenings transformed. Where I used to collapse on the couch after grading papers, now I stayed up measuring fabric, cutting, sewing. Olivia would film short videos for social media, my hands smoothing linen, the glow of a lamp spilling warmth across the table. "People like seeing you, Mom," she said one night, editing footage. "You've got this calm energy that feels safe." Safe? I laughed, half teasing. "That's a nice way of saying boring." She smiled without looking up. "No, it's comforting. People crave that now." Orders started trickling in faster than I could keep up. Local pickup requests, custom embroidery, notes from women saying my designs reminded them of home, of patience, of slower days. Every message felt like a small antidote to all the years of silence. I learned how to box and label, how to print shipping slips, how to smile into the uncertainty of growth. The first time a customer posted a photo of my runner on their dining table, with the caption, "A touch of warmth from Clara's hearth," I cried quietly at the kitchen counter. One Saturday, Olivia came home from the farmer's market holding a newspaper. "You're in print," she said, slapping it on the table. There it was, a small lifestyle feature. Local teacher's side hustle finds an audience. They'd taken one of Olivia's photos without even asking. My fingers trembled as I traced the caption. "That's your grandmother's name, you know," I murmured. "Clara's hearth. I used to think it was just a phrase." "It's legacy," Olivia said. "People are finally seeing what I've always known." A week later, during Sunday service, Pastor Roy introduced me to someone. "Clara, this is David Keller. He's an investor, big in local real estate, but his wife used to run a crafts boutique before she passed." David was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of measured smile that suggested he noticed more than he said. "I've been seeing your brand everywhere lately," he told me, shaking my hand. "My niece ordered one of your runners. Says it made her table feel alive." I felt my cheeks warm. "That's very kind of her. And you, for saying so." He gestured to the community hall, where my pieces now decorated the buffet tables. "You've got an instinct for presentation. Ever thought about scaling up?" I hesitated. "I wouldn't know where to begin." He smiled slightly. "You don't need capital yet, just guidance. May I stop by sometime? Talk you through some options?" Olivia, who had been hovering close enough to hear, answered for me. "Yes, absolutely." David chuckled. "I'll take that as a yes from both of you." That evening, he did stop by, carrying coffee and a folder of notes. He talked about branding, supply chains, licensing. I listened, half overwhelmed, half awed. When he finally stood to leave, he said, "You've got something rare, Clara. Don't let fear make you small." After he left, Olivia turned to me, eyes bright. "You realize who that is, right? He helped launch half the boutique shops downtown." I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. "He seems genuine?" "He's interested," she corrected. "Not in a creepy way. Business interested. You're about to outgrow everyone who looked down on you." Her words landed like a promise. I looked around our kitchen, the same walls that had witnessed so many lonely dinners, and suddenly they felt too tight, too small for whatever was coming next. I glanced at my phone, still lighting up with orders. One new message blinked on the screen, from Deborah Jennings Mills. Subject line, "Proud of you, sis." I stared at it, frozen. And then, slowly, I smiled. The family group chat lit up on a Tuesday morning, the kind of digital noise you can almost feel buzzing through your bones. Notifications stacked one after another. Balloons, champagne emojis, endless exclamation points. Michael and Diane's 30th anniversary. Family celebration weekend. Even without opening it, I knew my name wasn't on the invite. I was still technically in the group. A courtesy Deborah called inclusive, though it mostly meant I got to witness the highlights reel of a family that pretended I didn't exist. I scrolled anyway. Deborah had posted the event flyer, white and gold script, a photo of Michael and Diane smiling under fairy lights. Beneath it, she'd written, "Family means everyone together." I couldn't help myself. I laughed. Quiet, sharp, the kind that cuts on the way out. "Everyone together," I murmured, shaking my head. Olivia looked up from across the kitchen table, her laptop open to spreadsheets for our shipping orders. "What happened now?" "Another celebration," I said, tapping my phone. "Apparently everyone doesn't include us. Again." She frowned. "They really don't stop, do they?" "Habit," I said, setting the phone face down. "Exclusion's their favorite family tradition." She tilted her head, studying me. "Then start your own." I glanced at her. "My own what?" "Your own kind of celebration. You don't need their approval to mark your wins, Mom. You've got customers who love you more than your siblings ever did." Her words hung in the air like something half true, half daring me to believe it. That evening, I opened my design notebook. The pages were filled with sketches, linen textures, candle holders, centerpiece ideas. I flipped to a blank page and began sketching something new. Elegant, intricate, luxurious. Something that said, "Arrival." By January, the business had grown beyond my dining table. The orders had to be tracked in spreadsheets. We rented a small workshop space downtown that smelled faintly of sawdust and lavender oil. Olivia managed the online store between her own work shifts, and every night she'd bring in analytics charts like they were weather reports. "Your numbers are crazy," she said one night, eyes wide. "One of your videos just hit 300,000 views." "What video?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. "The one where you talk about making a home after loss." She smiled. "It's trending under Lashach Hearth Revival." I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. I hadn't even realized Olivia had posted that one. The next morning, we woke up to more orders than we could handle. People wanted more than table runners now. They wanted full-day corsets, custom embroidery, even design consultations. When David stopped by that afternoon, I showed him the dashboard numbers. He whistled low. "You're not just making crafts anymore, Clara. You're running a brand." I shook my head, half in disbelief. "I don't even know how this happened." He smiled. "You stopped apologizing for what you're good at." He helped me set up meetings with boutique clients across Nashville, small shops that sold handmade goods with a story behind them. I watched as my products found new homes, in store windows, online catalogs, dining rooms with polished oak tables. Each sale felt like another quiet reply to every text that had ever told me I didn't belong. One afternoon, while Olivia was photographing a new spring line, she caught me staring out the window, lost in thought. "You're thinking about them again," she said softly. "Maybe a little," I admitted. She smirked. "You know what's funny? They think ignoring you hurts you, but you're building an empire every time they pretend you're invisible." I smiled at that. A real one this time. Maybe invisibility's been the best disguise I could have asked for. Olivia's camera clicked. "Stay just like that," she said. You look powerful when you don't realize you are. That night, when the shop lights were off and the quiet settled back in, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the family chat again. Deborah had posted a new photo. The entire Jennings clan in coordinated beige outfits, gathered under chandeliers. The caption read, "The love that keeps us strong." I studied it for a long moment. Then I zoomed in, not at the people, but at the floral centerpieces. Perfect symmetry, neutral palette, familiar embroidery patterns. Olivia had gasped when she saw it later. "Mom, that's your design." I traced the screen with one finger, a slow, deliberate smile forming. "Well," I said, voice low, "I suppose I finally made it to the party." The phone buzzed again. Another order notification, and for the first time the sound didn't feel like a whisper of validation. It sounded like victory. It started with a phone call that didn't sound real. "Clara, it's David. Are you sitting down?" I laughed softly. "You make that sound ominous." "It's the opposite," he said, his tone alive with energy I'd never heard from him before. "Remember that decor chain I mentioned? The one expanding its artisan line? They want to acquire Clara's hearth. Full buyout, front-end contract for you to stay as creative director." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. "Acquire? You mean buy it?" "Yes. National rollout. Stores in 32 states. They're offering—" He paused, exhaled, as though steadying himself. "They're offering 7 figures, Clara." The room seemed to tilt. I sank into a chair, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. 7 figures? That's before royalties, he added, and they want to close within the month. I'll handle negotiations, but this is the real thing. I looked across the workshop. Half-finished runners, bolts of linen, spools of thread stacked like towers of small hope, and felt tears sting the back of my eyes. David, I don't even— What do I say?" He chuckled. "You say congratulations." That week felt like a dream on fast forward. Lawyers, contracts, numbers I'd only ever seen on the backs of real estate listings. Olivia sat beside me at the kitchen table every night, translating jargon, highlighting clauses, laughing in disbelief every time another document arrived. On Friday afternoon, I signed the final papers. The company that had started on this very table, where I'd once whispered to no one that I would make them regret it, was now officially part of a national brand. When the wire confirmation came through, I stared at the account balance, my hands trembling. Olivia leaned over my shoulder. "Mom, is that real?" I whispered. "It's real." I covered my face with both hands, the release hitting all at once. Years of scraping by, of counting coupons and swallowing pride, cracked open inside me. I cried, not out of greed or triumph, but sheer relief. Olivia knelt beside me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. I could feel her shaking too, half laughing, half sobbing. "We're debt-free," I managed between breaths. "We're safe." Olivia pulled back, grinning through tears. "Safe? Mom, you're rich." I laughed, the sound breaking and then soaring. "Don't say that too loudly. The walls might not believe it yet." But even as I said it, I knew something fundamental had shifted. The air in the room felt different, lighter, freer. News traveled fast in Nashville. Within days, the Tennessean ran a feature. Local teacher's home business acquired by national retailer. They used the photo of me and Olivia at the workshop. My hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, a finished table runner draped between us. By Sunday morning, I had 3 missed calls from Deborah. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I went to the church hall where Pastor Roy congratulated me quietly. You've shown a lot of folks here that grace doesn't mean surrender, Clara. I smiled. Grace is just the art of not announcing revenge too early. He chuckled. That might be my favorite sermon you've ever preached. That evening, as Olivia and I were eating takeout for the first time in months without guilt, my phone rang again. Michael this time. I answered on speaker. Hello? Clara. Hey, wow, I've been meaning to call. We were just talking about you. The way he said we carried that familiar blend of false warmth and sudden curiosity. Were you? I said, voice even. Yes. Deborah showed us the article. Incredible. We're so proud. Really. None of us knew how big this had gotten. I smiled into the receiver. I bet you didn't. He hesitated, as if searching for the right note to end on. Anyway, we should catch up soon. Maybe dinner? I'll check my calendar, I said lightly. Things are quite full these days. After we hung up, Olivia grinned across the table. You handled that perfectly. I picked up my wine glass, swirling it slowly. Let them wonder which version of me they're dealing with now. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window, the steady rhythm of change settling in. When I looked down at my reflection in the glass, it wasn't the uninvited sister staring back anymore. It was the woman who'd built her own table and just sold the design to the world. The voicemail came late on a Thursday, long after the day's noise had settled into the quiet hum of the house. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table again, different table now though, dark walnut, custom, mine. Olivia had insisted I buy something that felt like success, and this table did. The kind you could build a future on. When the phone buzzed, I didn't recognize the number right away. Nashville area code, but not one I had saved. Then I heard her voice through the speaker, syrupy smooth and deliberate as ever. Clara, hi, it's Deborah. We've been meaning to reconnect. Maybe you could join us for Christmas dinner this year? It would mean a lot to have everyone together. Give me a call when you can, sweetheart. The message ended with a soft click. I just sat there for a beat, blinking. The word sweetheart echoed in my head like a punchline. Olivia came in from the den, carrying her laptop and a bowl of popcorn. You look like you just saw a ghost, she said. I hit play again. Deborah's voice filled the kitchen, warm and false, the way it always was when she wanted something. When it ended, I looked up at Olivia and said, You're going to love this one. We listened to it together this time. Halfway through, Olivia let out a sharp laugh. Wow, that's bold. She didn't even try to make it sound sincere. Hypocrisy ages well in our family, I said dryly, deleting the voicemail but not before saving it to my cloud. She must have run out of donors to impress. Olivia's grin softened into something thoughtful. You should say yes. I arched a brow. You're joking. No, she said. Say yes, but on your terms. You don't have to play their game, Mom. You can make the rules now. Her words lingered in the air. I turned them over like a coin between my fingers. My terms. It had a nice ring to it. The next morning, I called Deborah back. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting beside the phone. Clara. Oh, it's so good to hear your voice. I was just thinking, Christmas won't feel right without you here. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. That's sweet, Deborah. I'll see what I can do. Oh, wonderful. I'll have Michael send the address and timing. It'll be lovely. Just family, of course. Of course. When I hung up, Olivia was leaning in the doorway, smirking. That sounded almost diplomatic. I learned from the best, I said. Now let's make sure I don't walk into their hall empty-handed. That afternoon, I called Pastor Roy. The church was hosting the community Christmas dinner, same event Deborah had been boasting about for years, the one she organized but mostly funded through others' generosity. Pastor, I said, I'd like to make a donation for the decorations this year. Something festive, elegant, but not flashy. He paused. That's kind of you, Clara. Would you like your name listed with the donors? I smiled at the question. No, let's just call it a gift from someone grateful for grace. When the shipment arrived a week later, the church hall was transformed. Garlands woven with gold ribbon, flickering glass lanterns, poinsettias framing the altar. The place glowed like something out of a magazine spread. Olivia and I attended the early service, sitting quietly in the back. I watched as Deborah strutted through the crowd, all pearls and smiles, taking credit with that unearned confidence she'd worn all her life. Beautiful, isn't it? Someone murmured near her. Oh, yes, Deborah said, gesturing as if she'd chosen every piece herself. I told the committee we needed to elevate things this year. I bit back a laugh. Olivia elbowed me gently. Don't, she whispered, grinning. Then Pastor Roy took the stage. His voice carried through the hall. Before we begin, I want to thank the anonymous donor who made this year's decorations possible. Their generosity has truly blessed our community. A hush rippled through the crowd, heads turning, whispers stirring. Deborah stood a little taller, chin lifting, a satisfied smile curving her lips. I watched her bask in borrowed glory, the light catching on her earrings like spotlights. My chest tightened, not with anger, but something quieter. Vindication, maybe. The sweet, private kind that doesn't need to be seen to be savored. Olivia leaned close. You should tell her. I shook my head. Oh no, let her have her moment. I've already got mine. The choir began to sing, their voices swelling under the twinkle lights I'd chosen. Deborah clapped politely, beaming at her imagined praise, and for the first time in years, I wasn't standing outside the circle. I was the circle, quietly drawing it, defining its edge, deciding who stood inside. As we left, I glanced back once more at the glowing hall. Next time, I said softly to Olivia, we'll host something of our own. Olivia smiled. Something that says arrival? Something that says rain, I corrected, my voice steady. Outside, the church bells rang through the cold night air, marking the hour. But to me, it sounded like a countdown. I didn't tell Olivia I was going. Some moments lose their power when announced in advance, and this one deserves surprise. The night before Christmas Eve, the church glowed like a jewel in the winter dark. Through the wide front windows, I could see them all, my family, moving between tables in coordinated colors, laughing just loudly enough for the sound to carry. Deborah's posture was perfect, as always, chin high, pearls gleaming. The rehearsal dinner for the community feast was half family tradition, half stage production. I stepped from my car, my heels clicking on the walkway, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small approaching that door. I felt prepared. Inside, conversations faltered. Even the music seemed to pause. I slipped off my coat and smiled. The way people do when they know they're not supposed to be there but came anyway. Clara! Deborah's voice pitched up an octave. Surprise smoothed quickly into performance. Oh, what a surprise. We didn't think you could make it. I almost didn't, I said easily, accepting her air kiss. But then I thought, how could I miss a family celebration? Michael appeared beside her, clutching a champagne bottle like a shield. Let's get everyone a refill, shall we? He said too brightly, motioning to a server. I watched them both, the quick glances, the unspoken panic behind polite smiles. Deborah gestured toward the long banquet table, covered in the same golden decor that had dazzled the church last week. "I'm so glad you like how everything turned out," she said, smoothing the table runner with deliberate pride. "Took quite a bit of coordination to get the details right." I traced the embroidered border with my fingertips, recognizing every stitch. "It's beautiful," I said, meeting her eyes. "Almost as if it were made for this family." She blinked, uncertain how to take that. Pastor Roy appeared near the pulpit, clapping his hands for attention. "Before dinner, I want to thank everyone who made tonight possible. The Jennings family, of course, and—" He paused, smiling toward me. "Our own Clara Jennings, whose designs you see gracing these tables." The silence that followed was exquisite. Deborah froze, her smile calcifying mid-expression. Michael coughed into his glass. Around us, polite applause rippled through the room, cautious at first, then warm. "Clara's hearth," Pastor Roy continued, gesturing to the runners and garlands. "A Nashville success story reminding us that faith and persistence can turn the ordinary into art." I inclined my head in thanks, the air around me suddenly electric. "That's kind of you, Pastor." Deborah finally found her voice. "Well, isn't that lovely?" she managed, brittle and too high. "I had no idea you were supplying the decorations this year." "I prefer subtle entrances," I said. Michael forced a laugh, pouring champagne for anyone within reach. "To family," he announced, raising his glass as if he could steer the moment back to safe territory. I picked up my own glass, stepping slightly forward. The light from the candles caught the gold embroidery of my sleeve, one of my own designs. "To family," I echoed, holding Deborah's gaze, "especially those who finally found room at the table." A soft murmur swept the crowd, half amusement, half shock. Olivia would have called it my southern dagger tone, sharp enough to cut, sweet enough to sound polite. Deborah's smile twitched but didn't falter. "Of course," she said, voice trembling just slightly. Dinner resumed, though the air felt charged, every glance carrying new calculation. Between bites of salmon and small talk, I could feel the shift happening, the quiet rearrangement of power. For once, I wasn't the ghost haunting the edges of their events. I was the story everyone was suddenly trying to interpret. After dessert, Pastor Roy approached me again. "You handled that gracefully," he murmured. "I just showed up," I said. "Sometimes that's all it takes." When I stepped outside, the night air bit cold against my skin. Through the frosted glass behind me, I could see Deborah still standing at the head of the table, her expression fixed somewhere between admiration and fear. Olivia texted just then. "How'd it go?" I smiled at the glowing screen, the church bells beginning to chime again. "Let's just say," I typed back, "they finally noticed I was in the room." And as I slipped into my car, the warmth of quiet triumph settled over me like a second skin, fitting perfectly, at last. By morning, the text messages had already started. "Deborah, lovely seeing you last night. You looked radiant." "Michael, everyone kept saying how proud we should be of you. The sudden affection felt like wearing someone else's perfume. Sweet, but not mine." Olivia read over my shoulder at breakfast, her spoon dangling above her cereal. "Wow, they wasted no time switching from condescension to PR mode." I sipped my coffee. Guilt comes fast when reputation's involved. She grinned. "You going to respond?" "Eventually," I said. "Let them wonder first." But I didn't have to wait long before Deborah called. Her voice was bright, brittle. "Clara, I just wanted to tell you again how wonderful it was having you there. We should do lunch soon. There's a new place on Belle Mead. So elegant. My treat. That sounds nice, I said evenly, already knowing I wouldn't go. Things are a little busy at the moment, but I'll check my schedule. Oh, of course, she said quickly. You must be swamped with your business. Everyone's talking about it. I imagine they are, I said, letting the pause hang long enough to sound polite but pointed. She hesitated before hanging up, as if unsure whether she'd made contact or just exposed motive. When the line went dead, I stared at my reflection in the coffee's surface. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt distance. When Olivia came home that evening, she found me arranging fresh orders at the workshop table, humming under my breath. Let me guess, she said. Deborah called? Lunch invitation. Ha! Olivia tossed her bag onto a chair. They're not sorry, Mom. They're jealous. I looked up at her, smiling faintly. Jealousy's fuel enough for me. Dangerous fuel, she teased. You planning to burn the house down or build something new? Both, I said, not joking. The following week, David dropped by for coffee. He'd been helping with some of the corporate transition paperwork, though I could tell he enjoyed the excuses to visit. There was a steadiness to him. No hidden agenda, no familial posturing. He set his mug down and leaned forward. You've done something extraordinary, Clara. But now that you have their attention, what do you actually want to do with it? I laughed. That's the million-dollar question. He smiled. I've been thinking, what if we hosted a charity gala? Something tasteful, but significant. You could highlight local artisans, donate proceeds to women starting over. It'd show that success hasn't changed your generosity. It's amplified it. I hesitated, swirling the coffee in my cup. A gala? Think of it as storytelling, he said. You're not just redefining yourself. You're redefining what family and community look like. The ones who dismissed you, let them see what grace with power looks like. Olivia, sitting nearby with her laptop, perked up. A gala could go viral, Mom. The story alone. Teacher turned entrepreneur gives back to her city. That's gold. I exhaled slowly. I don't want it to feel like revenge. David's eyes softened. Then don't call it that. Just make it so beautiful that it feels like truth. That night, I stood by the window of my home office, Nashville's skyline a low shimmer in the distance. The idea pulsed in my mind, a celebration not born of exclusion, but reclamation. Olivia came up behind me, arms crossed. You're thinking about it, aren't you? I am, I admitted. But if I do this, it needs to mean something. No hollow spectacle. She grinned. Meaning's your brand, Mom. The rest is just lighting. Her words made me laugh, but then I saw the date circled on my calendar. Jennings family reunion weekend. Deborah had texted the invitation weeks ago, all smiles and scripture quotes. I'd ignored it at the time. Now, a different thought took root. Olivia, I said slowly, what if we scheduled the gala for that same weekend? She turned toward me, eyes wide, then broke into a delighted grin. You mean while they're eating potluck in their rented ballroom, you'll be hosting half the city across town? Something like that, I said. Except mine will have live music and purpose. Olivia laughed, then reached for my hand. You're not just rewriting the story, Mom. You're printing a whole new edition. I looked out over the city again, the glittering lights, the hum of possibility. And for the first time in decades, the thought of family didn't sting. It sparked. They told me not to come, I murmured. So now I'm giving everyone else a reason to. The words hung between us, warm and electric. And as the night stretched long and full outside our windows, I realized that the countdown had ended. The show was about to begin. By Friday morning, my name was everywhere. The Tennessean, Southern Living Online, even a blurb on the local news crawl between weather updates. Local entrepreneur gives back. Nashville's own. Clara Jennings hosts black tie charity gala. It was surreal, seeing my name where I'd once seen only theirs. The photo they used wasn't posed. Olivia had taken it of me laughing during setup, one hand on a string of lights. The caption read, "Turning heartache into hope." By contrast, Deborah's reunion post on Facebook had 8 likes and 1 comment, from Michael. "Can't wait." Olivia couldn't stop grinning. "They picked the wrong weekend to be exclusive." "It's not about that," I said, smoothing down my gown in the mirror. Then I caught my own expression, calm, deliberate, and smiled at the lie I'd just told. The gala was held at the Symphony Center downtown. Crystal chandeliers, live jazz, an ocean of candlelight. Every table shimmered with my designs, the embroidered runners catching the golden glow like quiet applause. As guests filed in, I greeted each one, smiling, steady. I'd chosen a dark emerald dress, classic and unapologetic. It wasn't youth I was after. It was presence. David moved through the crowd like a conductor, ensuring every detail unfolded in rhythm. "You realize, don't you?" he whispered at one point. "This is your coronation." I laughed softly. "Let's just call it a gathering." "Of believers," he said, smiling. "You've earned this." Reporters milled near the bar, jotting quotes, snapping photos. One asked, "Ms. Jennings, what inspired you to host this?" I glanced toward the stage, where a framed photo of my late husband rested beside a new plaque. "Love," I said, "and the idea that no one should have to stand alone." Applause rippled through the room. Olivia squeezed my hand. Then, as if fate were on cue, the doors at the back opened. Deborah entered first, draped in navy silk, her expression a carefully rehearsed mix of surprise and approval. Behind her, Michael and Diane, and a few of their children, all overdressed for the event they hadn't been invited to. I watched their eyes widen as the room turned subtly toward them, curiosity sparkling like glass. Deborah recovered first, pasting on that smile she used when she needed to look magnanimous. "Clara," she breathed as she approached, "this is quite extravagant." I smiled back, raising my glass. Extravagance runs in the family. I just learned later. Her mouth twitched, the smallest flinch, but she recovered, clinking her champagne flute against mine. "Well, it's beautiful. We're so proud of you." "Of course you are," I said lightly, letting the words slide past the cameras just as the flashbulbs went off. Dinner began. The band shifted into something softer, and I stepped to the stage. The microphone was warm in my hand. The hush that fell wasn't the brittle silence of family dinners. It was reverence. "Tonight," I said, voice steady, "we gather not just to celebrate success, but to honor what built it." I started Clara's hearth at my own kitchen table, after losing nearly everything that made me feel at home. My husband, Thomas, believed that kindness was an inheritance, even when there was no money to leave behind. So tonight, we established the Thomas Jennings Memorial Scholarship for women starting over. Gasps, applause, and even a few tears spread through the crowd. I glanced toward my family's table. Deborah's smile had frozen mid-pride, realizing this moment wasn't hers to borrow. "To those who once stood alone," I continued, lifting my glass, "may you find your own table and fill it with light." Every camera flash after that felt like punctuation on a chapter I'd finally finished writing. Afterward, guests lined up to shake my hand, to thank me. David's face beamed with quiet satisfaction. Olivia moved among the crowd like sunlight, glowing with shared victory. When the final song played, a slow instrumental, I caught sight of Deborah watching me from the edge of the dance floor. For the first time in years, her eyes didn't hold disdain. They held confusion, maybe awe, maybe fear. She approached as the music faded. "You've changed," she said softly. "No," I replied. "I just stopped asking permission." For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled thinly, the kind of smile that meant surrender wrapped in civility. "Congratulations," she murmured. "Thank you," I said. "Truly." The photographers turned their lenses toward us, two sisters side by side, champagne glasses glinting under chandelier light. To everyone watching, it looked like unity. But we both knew what it really was: a shift in the crown. The night had begun to thin, guests drifting home in twos and threes, laughter fading into the winter air. The ballroom lights dimmed to a softer gold, and I finally slipped outside to breathe. The courtyard garden behind the Symphony Center was strung with fairy lights, their reflections trembling in the shallow fountain. I leaned against the stone railing, exhaling, the cold air slicing clean through the perfume and champagne haze. For the first time all night, it was quiet, until I heard her voice. "Clara." Deborah stood at the edge of the path, her heels crunching against gravel. She'd shed the performance smile. What was left was something sharper, brittle. "This," she said, gesturing toward the ballroom's glowing windows, "was quite a spectacle. I just have to ask." She tilted her head. "Was this revenge?" I turned toward her slowly, my expression calm. "No," I said. "It's gratitude." Her brow creased. "Gratitude? You taught me what I'm capable of without you." For a moment, she looked like she might laugh. But she didn't. Instead, she glanced down at the fountain, her reflection rippling. "You know," she said finally, "you could have told us what you were planning. We might have supported it." I smiled at that, softly, painfully. "You'd already told me not to come to your table, remember? I just built another one." The sound of footsteps broke the tension. Michael, jacket slung over one arm, face flushed from wine and damage control. "There you two are," he said lightly, his lawyer's voice slipping into gear. "Beautiful night, huh? Look, Clara, we've all been talking. Deborah and I think there's an opportunity here for the family to come together, maybe even collaborate." I raised an eyebrow. "Collaborate?" He nodded earnestly. "We've got contacts in event planning, sponsorships. If we pooled resources, this could become something bigger. National, even." I laughed, not cruelly, but with the quiet finality of someone who's done explaining. "You missed the right time to believe in me, Michael. That door closed a long time ago." He blinked, thrown off by the tone. "I'm just saying, why not keep it in the family?" "Because you made it clear once," I said, "that I wasn't part of it." He shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward Deborah. "That's not fair. Things were complicated." "No," I cut in. "They were simple. You looked at me and saw failure. Now you see opportunity. The view changed. You didn't." Behind us, the garden door creaked open. Olivia stepped out, her heels tapping softly across the stone. She must have heard enough. Her posture said so. "You should go back inside," Deborah muttered. "I'm fine here," Olivia replied, cool but steady. Her eyes were on me, not them. David followed a moment later, carrying two coats. "There you are," he said pleasantly, as if unaware of the storm he'd walked into. "They're breaking down the auction tables. Thought you might be cold." His timing was surgical. He draped my coat over my shoulders, then looked at Deborah and Michael with a polite, unshakable calm. "I'd say," he remarked casually, "she invested in herself beautifully." The silence that followed felt electric. Too full, too raw. Deborah's jaw tightened. "Well?" she said finally, voice quivering with the effort to stay civil. "Not everyone needs to turn success into a sermon." I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear. "Then maybe not everyone should have built their church on someone else's absence." For a second, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she turned, the movement crisp, almost regal. "Enjoy your kingdom, Clara," she said. "But don't think the crown doesn't come with weight." Then she walked away, Michael following in uneasy silence, his attempt at a farewell swallowed by the cold. When the doors closed behind them, Olivia slipped her hand into mine. "You didn't need to say more," she whispered. They heard it. David smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes soft. "They'll remember it too." I looked back toward the ballroom, where workers were dimming the last lights. The reflection of the chandeliers glittered on the fountain's surface, distorted, beautiful, fleeting. "They always said I didn't belong in the picture," I murmured. "Funny how small it looks without me." Olivia squeezed my hand. "Then let's keep making new ones." The wind stirred, lifting the hem of my coat like a flag. For the first time, I didn't feel like I'd won something temporary. I'd reclaimed something permanent. Inside, the music faded. Outside, the night bowed to me, quietly, without applause. The first rumor surfaced 3 days after the gala. It started small, whispered through church groups and garden clubs, then spread across dinner tables like wildfire dressed in silk. Clara only made money because of David Keller. He bankrolled her from the start. The business was his idea. By the end of the week, someone had added a flourish. "There's more than mentorship between them." Olivia read one of the gossip posts out loud from her phone, her voice dripping sarcasm. "Wow. Apparently, you're Nashville's next scandal." I stirred my tea, unbothered. "It's funny," I said, "how people who never built anything are so sure they know who laid the foundation." She frowned. "You're not seriously going to ignore this?" "Yes," I said simply. "Acknowledging lies just gives them air. And I've spent enough years suffocating in other people's opinions." Olivia sighed, pacing. "It's not fair. You work your whole life for this, and they can't stand to see you win." "Fair," I murmured, smiling faintly, "isn't a word that ever built an empire." She stopped pacing and looked at me, then exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said finally, "then I'll handle it my way." I didn't ask what she meant. I'd learned that Olivia inherited more than my stubbornness. She'd inherited my sense of strategy. 2 days later, she came home grinning like someone who'd just disarmed a bomb. "Remember my friend Kendra from the marketing firm?" she said, tossing her keys on the counter. "She owes me a favor." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that replaces gossip with headlines." That Sunday morning, while I was brewing coffee, my phone buzzed. The notification banner read, "Teacher turned CEO inspires women over 50. Clara Jennings on reinvention, resilience, and redefining family." The article was everywhere, shared, reposted, quoted. The photos were elegant, the tone reverent. The subhead read, "When the world closed its doors, she built her own." Olivia leaned against the counter, arms folded, smug as a cat. "Now that's how you starve a rumor. You bury it under something true. I laughed, genuinely this time. Remind me never to cross you. You won't, she said. You raised me. By the following weekend, the narrative had flipped. The same people who whispered lies were now name-dropping me with pride. Such a classy woman. So poised. Never let success change her. Even Deborah's allies had gone quiet. Envy was a fragile fuel. It burned hot, but not long. Still, I should have known my sister wouldn't stay silent forever. The next Sunday, during fellowship hour at church, Deborah approached me. The room hummed with the low chatter of congregants balancing coffee cups and polite curiosity. She looked flawless as ever, pearls catching the morning light. "Clara," she began, her voice just loud enough for nearby ears. "I wanted to congratulate you on that article. Quite redemptive." I smiled politely. "Thank you. Redemption suits everyone, doesn't it?" Her lips twitched. "Of course. Though some people might say success comes easier when one has guidance." I met her gaze, calm and level. Some people mistake partnership for dependence. Easy to do when they've never stood alone. Before she could reply, Pastor Roy's gentle baritone cut through the tension. Now, he said, appearing between us like an old oak tree breaking a storm. The Lord calls us to forgive each other. Life's too short for pride. Deborah nodded demurely, eyes flicking toward the small audience gathering around us. "I couldn't agree more, Pastor." I set down my cup, looking him straight in the eye. "Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, Pastor. Just peace." His brows lifted, but he smiled softly. "Peace is a good start." I turned to Deborah. "I've already found mine." And I had. Because standing there, surrounded by whispers and Sunday perfume, I realized her power had dissolved into imitation. Every time she tried to reclaim authority, it came out like an echo of mine. As she excused herself, the murmur of conversation picked up again. Small talk, laughter, the sound of the world moving on. Olivia joined me near the door, slipping her arm through mine. "You didn't flinch," she whispered. "Why would I?" I said. "You don't bow to noise once you've learned it's just wind." She smiled. "You think she'll try again?" "Oh," I said, glancing toward Deborah's retreating silhouette. "She'll try, but she's running out of lies that sound believable." Outside, the church bells began to ring, slow and solemn. To everyone else, it was the call to service. To me, it sounded like the toll of an ending, hers, not mine. The phone rang late on a Tuesday morning, just as sunlight spilled across the workshop floor. Olivia was photographing a new line of spring tableware, the camera clicking softly. I almost ignored the call. Unknown number, landline ID, but something in my chest said answer. When I picked up, the line was quiet at first. Then a frail, familiar voice said my name. "Clara." I froze. "Mother." "I wasn't sure you'd pick up," she said, her voice trembling around the words. "I had to try." There was a long pause, heavy, uncertain. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since she'd politely avoided choosing sides. For years, she'd played peacekeeper, which in our family often meant bystander. She took a shaky breath. "I've been watching the news. The gala, the article. I saw you on TV." I waited. "I should have stopped them," she said finally, the sentence breaking halfway through. "Deborah, Michael, all those years I let them treat you like you were less." I told myself I was keeping the peace. But it wasn't peace. It was cowardice. The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. "Mama," I whispered, but couldn't manage more. "I should have told you then." she continued softly. You didn't deserve that kind of silence from me. Decades of tension, unspoken, brittle, calcified, seemed to shift just then. I closed my eyes, the sound of her voice pulling me backward and forward at once. You don't owe me an apology, I said quietly. Not anymore. Oh, but I do, she insisted. You built something beautiful out of the scraps they left you. You turned exile into empire. For the first time, I heard pride in her tone, real, unguarded pride. It disarmed me. I swallowed hard. I just stopped waiting for invitations. That made her laugh, a sound I hadn't heard in too long. Your father would have loved that. I smiled faintly. I like to think he saw it coming. When the call ended, I sat for a while, staring at the window. Outside, the afternoon light glowed pale gold, quiet and forgiving. That Saturday, Olivia drove me to the small brick house where I'd grown up. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered. The oak tree thinner, the porch steps shallower. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and thyme. Mama was waiting in the living room, wearing the same cardigan she'd worn at every Thanksgiving I'd been uninvited to. But when she saw me, she stood, her hands trembling as if unsure whether she had the right to reach out. She didn't have to decide. I crossed the room first. We held each other for a long time, so long it stopped feeling like forgiveness and started feeling like release. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes were wet but clear. I've missed too much, she said. Then start missing less, I replied. She laughed softly, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Your father used to say you were the stubborn one. He was right, I said. We sat together for hours, talking about everything we hadn't said in decades. The small betrayals, the quiet endurance, the years between silence and survival. Olivia moved around the room quietly, capturing a few candid photos from the doorway. I didn't realize until later that she'd caught us mid-laughter, hands clasped, surrounded by light. You're building a new legacy, she told me on the drive home, scrolling through the pictures. Maybe, I said, but it's really just a correction. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my office, surrounded by sketches for an upcoming collaboration, the sound of crickets threading through the open window. My mother's words echoed in the quiet. You turned exile into empire. I picked up my pen and wrote down an idea. The Hearth and Her Gala, celebrating the women who build from nothing. The concept bloomed instantly, tables curated by local female artists, scholarships for mothers re-entering the workforce, tributes to generations of women who carried grace like armor. I could almost see it. A hall filled with stories, not apologies. Olivia's photo of me and Mama sat beside the lamp. I looked at it, the warmth in her wrinkled smile, and whispered, "This one's for us." Outside, the wind shifted, a gentle, unseen approval, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was reclaiming the past. I was building a future from it. It began, as downfalls often do, with whispers. A headline buried halfway down the local business section, Jennings and Mills Law Firm under federal audit. At first, I skimmed past it, not realizing it was Michael's firm, but by the following week, the story grew teeth. Allegations of mishandled accounts, unpaid taxes, questionable donations. His smiling headshot now sat under words like investigation and liability. Then came the texts. Deborah, Michael's firm is in trouble. Can we talk? Deborah, again. It's urgent, Clara. Please. I didn't reply at first. Compassion doesn't always arrive on schedule. But when she called the third time, her voice was different, stripped of polish. Clara, I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. We're we're not doing well. I let the silence stretch just long enough for honesty to fill it. What do you need? A consultation, she said finally. Business advice, I suppose. You've built something solid. Maybe you could look at the books? Not an apology. A transaction. Even her desperation had etiquette. Send the paperwork, I said. The next afternoon, their world arrived in a box. Folders, spreadsheets, receipts. Years of excess stacked in glossy envelopes. I spent the evening reading through them at my desk, my glasses slipping down my nose, each page a quiet confession. Maxed out lines of credit, luxury renovations, staff bonuses marked as charitable deductions. Olivia passed by with a cup of coffee and stopped. Is that what I think it is? I nodded. They've been living off image and interest. Her lips parted in disbelief. After everything they said about you. Don't. I interrupted softly. This isn't about revenge. It's about closure. Still, as I turned another page, I felt a flicker of grim irony. Deborah had always lectured me about being fiscally responsible. Now her spreadsheets looked like prayer requests. We met 2 days later at my office downtown, a minimalist space of glass and oak. Deborah arrived first. Overdressed but smaller somehow, her energy diffused. Michael followed, eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Thank you for seeing us, she said, her tone rehearsed but fragile. Of course, I said evenly. Have a seat. I walked them through their own ledgers like a surgeon reviewing an autopsy. You can recover, I said finally, but not without changes. Michael rubbed his temples. What kind of changes? You'll sell the secondary property, I said. Scale back expenses, dissolve non-essential partnerships. And Deborah, stop hosting events you can't afford to attend. Her head snapped up. Excuse me? I met her eyes, calm and unflinching. If you want solvency, you'll need humility. She blinked, swallowing hard. I understand. I closed the folder, sliding it toward them. You don't owe me anything except follow through. This is business, not blood. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Michael cleared his throat. Clara, you've really built something remarkable. I don't think we ever said that enough. You didn't have to, I said. I heard it anyway, every time you told me what I couldn't do. Deborah looked up, eyes glassy. I was wrong, she said quietly. About you. About everything. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close enough for the air to shift. Thank you, I said softly. Now let's get you out of this hole. Over the next month, I guided them through restructuring, my tone steady, professional. I spoke to their accountants, reviewed their contracts, negotiated settlements. When it was over, they weren't rich anymore, but they were stable. One evening, Deborah showed up at my office again. She stood by the door, hands clasped like someone at confession. We just got final clearance, she said. We're back on our feet. Because of you. I looked up from my paperwork, offering the faintest smile. You're welcome at my table anytime. Her eyes filled, though she blinked the tears away quickly. You mean that? I wouldn't say it if I didn't. She nodded slowly, then turned toward the door. But before she left, she glanced back once. You always were the better woman, Clara. I just took too long to see it. When she was gone, I sat in the silence for a while, letting the weight of it settle. Olivia appeared in the doorway. That looked satisfying. It wasn't, I said, smiling faintly. It was necessary. She tilted her head. So, is it over? I looked out at the Nashville skyline. the fading sun washing the city in amber. No, I said quietly, it's just balanced. And that, I realized, was better than victory. It was peace, grace with structure, the kind that holds. The invitations arrived printed on ivory cardstock with gold edging. Simple, elegant, unmistakably Jennings. The Hearth and Heritage Benefit Gala, sponsored by Clara's Hearth, in partnership with the Jennings Family Foundation. The first time I read the mock-up, I laughed softly. Partnership. A word that had once been a foreign language between us now sat embossed in gold. The event was held at the same church hall where I'd once watched Deborah accept applause meant for me. This time, though, my name stood beside hers on every banner. Not smaller, not lower, equal. By early evening, the place glowed again. Candles flickering in mirrored vases, garlands draped across the pulpit, strings of amber light softening the walls. The scent of cedar and cinnamon drifted through the air. Guests filtered in, warm laughter echoing across polished floors. Michael shook hands. Deborah smiled graciously, and for once, there was no edge in her tone when she introduced me. None of this would be possible without my sister, she said, turning toward me with practiced sincerity that, this time, didn't feel forced. Applause followed, genuine and steady. I smiled, but my eyes found Olivia and Mama seated near the front. Olivia was radiant in deep burgundy, camera in hand, already catching the moments before they disappeared. Mama, small and serene beside her, clapped until her eyes glistened. Then Pastor Roy stepped forward, adjusting his microphone. "Before we begin," he said, his voice carrying like it always did, "I'd like to offer a reflection." He glanced toward me, a twinkle in his eye. "Family isn't who invites you first," he said. "It's who stays when you walk in anyway." A murmur rippled through the crowd, gentle laughter, a few knowing nods. Deborah's smile wavered but held steady. I met the pastor's gaze, inclining my head in quiet acknowledgement. When he gestured me forward, I walked to the stage, my heels clicking softly against the wooden floor. For a fleeting second, I saw my younger self in that motion, the woman who once stood outside this very hall, watching light spill through its windows. Now, I was the light. "Thank you, Pastor," I began. "And thank you all for being here. Tonight isn't about success or status. It's about continuity. About the hands that built what we stand on and the ones who will build after us." I glanced toward my mother. The women in my family have spent generations setting tables, even when they weren't invited to sit at them. Tonight, we honor that lineage, not with pity, but with pride. The applause that followed was warm, enveloping. Even Deborah was clapping, her eyes glassy, her shoulders lowering with something that looked a lot like surrender. Afterward, dinner flowed with the quiet rhythm of contentment. The air hummed with conversation and music. No tension, no pretending, just peace. When David rose from the far end of the table, champagne glass in hand, the chatter softened. He smiled at me before turning to the crowd. "I think it's time for a proper toast," he said, "to the woman who taught us the value of being unwelcome." Laughter rippled through the hall. Good-natured, genuine. Deborah laughed too, and for the first time, it didn't sound hollow. David continued, his tone deepening. "Because being unwelcome teaches resilience. It sharpens grace, and sometimes it gives birth to empires that redefine family." He lifted his glass toward me. "To Clara." A chorus of glasses followed. "To Clara." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, not from pride, but from something gentler. Acceptance. I turned to Deborah. She met my eyes, her expression soft and unguarded. "Thank you," she mouthed, and I believed her. Mama leaned in and whispered, "You've done what I never could." I smiled. "You raised me to." As the band began a slow waltz, Olivia tugged me toward the dance floor, camera dangling at her wrist. The light caught the embroidery of my gown, my own design, threaded in gold. The crowd swayed around us, laughter like wind through open doors. When the song ended, Deborah approached, hesitating just a breath before stepping forward. "May I?" she asked. I nodded, offering my hand. We danced slowly, the years between us dissolving in the rhythm. She leaned in, whispering, "You've built something beautiful, Clara." "So have you," I said. "You just needed a sturdier foundation." She smiled through her tears. And for the first time since we were children, I saw my sister, not my rival. As the night wound down, I stepped aside, watching Olivia photograph the crowd, our family, together again, reshaped and redeemed. And when the flash caught my face, surrounded by light and laughter, I realized something profound. I'd spent years trying to earn a seat at the table. Now I was the one deciding how big the table should be. Outside, the bells began to ring, steady, full, alive. But this time, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like legacy. The first snow of December dusted the rooftops like powdered sugar, softening the whole street into something that looked almost unreal. Inside my house, no, our house, the air hummed with warmth, the scent of roasted rosemary chicken and cinnamon rolls drifting through every open door. It was the first annual Hearth Dinner, open to everyone, neighbors, employees, students, artists. No invitations, no hierarchy, no guest list. Just a promise. Come hungry, leave whole. The dining room glowed under strands of tiny golden lights. The long oak table, built by a local carpenter, designed by me, stretched across the space like an anchor. Each seat was different, intentionally mismatched. Some cushioned, some wooden, all welcoming. Olivia flitted between guests, camera in hand, her laughter rising above the music. David was in the kitchen, pouring wine, sleeves rolled up like he belonged there, which, somehow, he always had. Mama sat near the fireplace, telling one of her stories to a small group of guests who leaned in like children, and then the front door opened. I turned, already smiling, before I even saw them. Deborah and Michael stood in the doorway, snow clinging to their coats, looking, if not nervous, then reverent. They weren't late. They were careful. "Come in," I said simply. They did. No grand entrance, no announcement. Just a quiet step into the warmth they once denied me. "Smells incredible," Deborah said softly, slipping off her gloves. "Olivia's recipe," I said, nodding toward the kitchen. "She's taken over more than I expected." Deborah smiled faintly. "You always said she would?" Before I could answer, Michael cleared his throat and gestured toward the kitchen island. "We brought pies," he said, "and we'd like to help serve, if that's all right." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I just nodded. Of course. They joined the flow of the evening seamlessly, serving plates, refilling glasses, laughing when a guest mistook Michael for one of the caterers. Deborah carried dishes to Mama's table and sat beside her, their conversation low, gentle. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't watching for cracks anymore. The balance had shifted long ago, and it had held. Later, when everyone had eaten and the candles burned down to soft pools of light, Olivia tapped a fork against her glass. Can I have everyone's attention for a second? She stood near the end of the table, her cheeks flushed from wine and joy. Most of you know what my mom's built over the last few years, she said. But what you might not know is what she's about to build next. I frowned slightly. Olivia. She grinned. Too late. It's already happening. The crowd chuckled, leaning in. She held up a small framed document. The Clara Jennings Foundation, dedicated to women starting over. Scholarships, grants, mentorships, small business funding. It's official as of this morning. The room erupted in applause. I covered my face for a second, laughing through tears I didn't have the strength to stop. You didn't, I whispered when she hugged me. Oh, I absolutely did, she said, her voice soft against my ear. You taught me what to do when doors don't open. You build new ones. The applause swelled again, warm and unforced, wrapping around us like music. When the noise finally faded into chatter and laughter, I sat back in my chair, watching the people filling every inch of the space I once kept small. Deborah was talking to David near the dessert table. Michael was pouring coffee for Mama. Olivia was dancing barefoot with one of the neighbor kids in the hallway. I looked around. The mismatched chairs, the flicker of candles, the sound of belonging, and let the peace settle deep into me. Once, I begged for a seat. I said quietly, almost to myself. Now I build the tables. David appeared beside me, setting down a glass of wine. You changed more than your fortune, Clara. I smiled, eyes still on the room. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped mistaking exile for failure. He chuckled softly, lifting his glass. To the woman who made being unwelcome into an art form. I touched my glass to his. To the people who showed me how not to be. The laughter, the hum of conversation, the warmth, it all blurred together into something eternal. As the snow fell heavier outside, the windows fogged from the heat inside. I caught my reflection in the glass, older, steadier, content. They'd told me I wasn't welcome. So I became the place everyone wanted to be. And for the first time, the night didn't feel like closure. It felt like forever.